All right, so the topic for today is leadership. Leadership, an important part of Section 2, people in organizations, and there are quite a few questions based on this if you go through the past papers on leadership. So first of all, the definition, as usual, whenever you attempt a question, as you already know, right in the introductory paragraph, you must define the key term, and you must try to identify the problem right in the first paragraph. And if it is paper 2, 3, or 4, always refer to the passage and give the background. This is, a basic drill that needs to be followed. So these are the 3 boxes that must be ticked. This is a checklist. Always define the key term, identify the problem, and refer to the passage, give the background. If it is obviously a data response or case study based paper. So leadership, the best definition that I came across as far as leadership goes, it is the art of influencing others. Leadership is the art of influencing others in such a way that they start following the leader willingly. Right? The art of influencing others in such a manner that they start following the leader or they start walking in his footsteps willingly. And willingly is the key word here. This is like a litmus test. If you want to assess the leadership qualities or the ability of an individual to lead, this is like a litmus test. That his followers, they always follow him willingly. Right? They're not forced into it. So that's the definition. Then right after this, it is important for us to draw a line between leadership and management, or leaders and managers. Right? So basically, I would like to highlight 3 points, the 3 factors here that can be used for distinguishing a manager from a true leader. So, first of all, managers, they're appointed. Managers are appointed. Leaders, on the other hand, they emerge with the passage of time. Right? They emerge with the passage of time because of their leadership qualities. Managers, they're selected, they're appointed. It's like a job, it's like a designation, being a manager. But a leader is someone who's not appointed, he's not selected. He emerges with the passage of time. He shines, he stands out because of his specific leadership qualities. That's number 1. Number 2, managers, they are functionaries. They're functionaries, whereas leaders, they're innovators. A manager is just a functionary, he's programmed to do something, like a piece of machinery or like a robot, that over and over again, he will, perform the same function. He's in a way programmed to do that. A leader, on the other hand, he's not a functionary, he's an innovator. And we all have an idea what an innovation is. This is an integral part of entrepreneurship. The leaders, they're innovative by nature. They would think out of the box. They would come up with new ideas. They will experiment. Leaders are innovative, and managers, they are functionaries. And thirdly, a manager accepts responsibilities. A manager accepts responsibilities, but there is a leader, he seeks responsibilities. A manager accepts, a leader seeks responsibilities. Right? A manager, you assign a task to him and he will try and, perform at his optimum level. But a leader, he doesn't really wait for instructions or orders. A leader is someone who takes the initiative. He seeks responsibilities and, in a given set of conditions, if he feels that he can play a role, if he feels that, the situation demands that he should make a contribution, he would simply go ahead. He wouldn't wait for instructions. He's somebody who takes the initiative, right? So this is how you draw a line between managers and leaders. And also remember, the moment a manager, he reaches a point where he possesses these qualities, the ones that I just highlighted, that manager will be transformed into a leader. In business organizations, managers eventually will become leaders. So manager without these qualities is just a mediocre manager, whereas a leader is someone who has these qualities, and the moment a manager, he reaches a stage where he becomes innovative and he starts taking the initiative and all these qualities that we've discussed, that manager, in a way, he will be upgraded to the position of a leader, right? So we define leadership, then we draw a line between leaders and managers. Right after this, there has to be a paragraph on leadership qualities. As far as leadership qualities are concerned, there are three schools of thought, or there are three groups of social scientists who have expressed their views regarding leadership qualities. And these are contrasting views. So one school of thought, one group says that the appearance of the leader or the physical traits of the leader matter the most. Right? This is the opinion of one particular group of social scientists. This is one school of thought, that the physical traits or the appearance of the leader that should matter the most. That is the most important leadership quality. Obviously, it's debatable. Then there's another group that disagrees, and they say that physical traits, physical characteristics are not as important as personality traits. Right? The first group said that, the appearance, or, in very simple terms, that group was of the opinion that a leader should look like a leader. His appearance should be such that he should leave an impact. The other group says that more than appearance, it is the personality that matters. And personality, as we know, it's a combination, it's a blend of numerous traits. But the two most important traits that must be highlighted here are the confidence level and his communication skills. Confidence and communication skills, these two are the two most important personality traits. And if you conduct a survey and if you try to observe leadership all over the world, people who are acting like leaders in different capacities, you will always notice that usually, their communication skills are good, their public speaking skills are strong, and they are confident. Whatever they say or do, there's an element of confidence that's rather prominent, right? And then there's a third school of thought also, which is led by a renowned social scientist, Gary Yuki. Gary Yuki says, and other people who are, in the same camp, Gary Yuki says that the most important leadership quality is flexibility. He keeps it simple. His approach is, it is less philosophical, more practical. Gary Yuki says that the most important leadership quality is flexibility. That a leader is someone who's flexible, who's not rigid, who knows when and how to make adjustments. He assesses the situation and he changes the leadership style accordingly. He's flexible. He makes adjustments. And there are two or three other words that he has also, used in his theory for describing leadership. He says, obviously, the focal point is flexibility. Then he says, leaders are tactful. They handle situations tactfully, sensibly. And then he says, the leaders, he goes to the extent of saying, Gary Yuki, the leaders are diplomatic also. Diplomacy is another leadership quality that he tries to assess how, or what the other person wants, and he makes adjustment in his own leadership style accordingly. He's diplomatic in his approach. So he's tactful, flexible, diplomatic, and he's ambitious. And leaders usually are ambitious. They have high aims. So this is the third school of thought. So this is like a comparative analysis. One group focuses more on physical traits, the other group personality traits, and the third one, the Gary Yuki being the major, person who represents that group, he advocates the need for flexibility, right? And of course, he has to be ambitious also. Okay, so after leadership qualities, we need to understand what the leadership roles are, leadership roles in business. So in a business, in an organization, one can act as a leader in 4 different capacities, the 4 different leadership roles in business. Number one is that of the directors. Who's a director? He's a senior manager who is elected by the shareholders, through a voting procedure. So director is a senior manager who's elected by the shareholders. So he plays the role of a leader. He formulates long-term strategies for his department, for his business, and also tries to make sure they are implemented properly. That is his leadership role. Then there's the role of managers. They also act like leaders in a business. A manager is someone who takes care of all the financial and human resources of a department or an organization. And we are all familiar with what Fayol said or Mintzberg said about management. The managers, they're involved in planning and organizing, coordinating, etc. This was Fayol. And Mintzberg obviously focused more on interpersonal roles and decision roles, information roles, right? So, yes, in leadership, when you're discussing leadership roles in business, the role of directors is important, the role of managers. They're actively involved in managers, they're actively involved in, numerous, they take part in numerous activities, training and recruitment and enforcing discipline and all that. That is a leadership role. Then there is another leadership role that we come across in organizations, that is the role of a supervisor. Supervisor is someone who supervises, who keeps an eye, who keeps a check on whatever is going on. He's a supervisor. He's never involved in planning, you must remember. Supervisors, they're not engaged in planning. Directors are, managers are, not supervisors. But supervisors, a supervisor acts like a gatekeeper, you can say. He tries to keep an eye, he watches over the performance of others, but he's not involved in planning. We just try to see that everything is in order and everyone is performing his duty properly as directed by the senior management. So they give him the plan and he tries to execute it and make sure that everyone adheres to the code of conduct. He's a supervisor, that is also a leadership role. And then the last one, workers' representatives. Workers' representatives, basically, these are trade union leaders. Workers' representatives, in companies or in organizations or in countries where trade unions are allowed to function freely, trade union leaders, they also play an important leadership role because they fight for the rights of their fellow workers. They try to negotiate with the management regarding various issues of a mutual interest on behalf of their fellow workers. So trade union leaders or worker representatives, they also act as leaders in organizations. So basically, leadership roles in business, role of a director, a manager, a supervisor, and a workers representative or a trade union leader. Then right after this, we need to know something about the styles of leadership also. So primarily, leadership styles, they are classified into three different categories. Number one, we have autocratic leadership, right? Autocratic leadership, an autocratic leader is someone who establishes a centralized management structure, right? Who establishes centralized management structure, an autocratic leader. Centralization means that all the powers are in the hands of one individual, a very small group of individuals, and they do not like to delegate powers. An autocratic leader does not believe in the delegation of powers. He tries to exercise a tight control over, all the affairs of the business, and he does not like to delegate powers to his subordinates. He takes all the decisions himself. He doesn't encourage his employees to participate in the decision-making process. That's an autocratic leader. And when you're conducting a comparative analysis, you should be able to identify the pros and cons. Autocratic leadership may prove to be effective in smaller businesses because smaller businesses can be managed easily without any, delegation of powers. Or autocratic leadership is also recommended, or it's more effective if the workers are unskilled. If the workers are unskilled, if the workers are incompetent, if the workers are unreliable, then an autocratic style of leadership is recommended. Then obviously you can't allow your workers to take decisions, or you can't delegate powers to them because they're not skilled enough or experienced enough or trustworthy enough maybe. But the main drawback associated with autocratic leadership, and there's a lot of criticism also in this regard, is that it demotivates the workers. It has a demotivating impact on workers. Workers, they start feeling that they're not allowed to express their opinion and they have to work like robots. So yes, it does demotivate workers, and demotivation leads to so many other drawbacks. If the workers are demotivated, productivity might be compromised. If the workers are demotivated, the image of the organization will, that would be at stake. And of course, if the workers are demotivated, labor turnover will rise, so on and so forth. So yes, that is that is a huge drawback associated with autocratic leadership. And of course, secrecy is, in autocratic leadership, when you're discussing the advantages, a plus point, that supports autocratic leadership is that, secrecy is not compromised, a high degree of confidentiality is maintained in advantages. because the leader doesn't really discuss his plan with his workers. But the main drawback, which perhaps overshadows the advantages, is demotivation. And also, if it's a large business, autocratic leadership will never work. If it's a large business, it is practically impossible to survive, unless the management, they delegate powers to their subordinates. Large businesses cannot be handled in a centralized way or in an autocratic way. That doesn't work in case of large businesses, autocratic leadership. So, as opposed to autocratic leadership, democratic leadership is the one in which there's a high degree of decentralization, right? There's a high degree of decentralization in democratic leadership because in this style of leadership, the managers, they like to delegate powers to their subordinates. Democratic leadership is the one in which powers are delegated to subordinates, and it's a decentralized structure. And basically the advantages and drawbacks, everything will be reversed now, just the opposite. In a comparative analysis, democratic leadership motivates workers. It raises the motivation level of workers. That is why this style of leadership is also called a participative style of management, because the workers, they're encouraged to participate or take part in the decision-making process. New ideas are generated, workload is shared, and it's an ideal leadership style for large businesses in which you have to delegate powers. And democratic leadership is a great motivational tool. Workers, when they are allowed to express their opinion and the senior management, they give importance to their opinion, obviously they'll be motivated to work. So, and for large businesses, it's almost, it's essential for a large business that you decentralize the structure and adopt a democratic style of leadership. And it leads to quick decision making also in larger businesses, because the workers, they don't have to, ask for permission, or they don't need the consent of the head office before each and every decision is made. There are certain decisions that they can finalize themselves also because powers have been delegated to them. So you have to remember that democratic leadership helps in saving time in larger businesses. Autocratic leadership helps in saving time in smaller businesses. You have to remember this, right? But again, there is some criticism of democratic style of leadership, because you see, if the workers are not qualified enough, if the workers, they are not skilled enough or they are not trustworthy, then obviously democratic leadership can lead to problems. And if you start discussing everything with your workers, time might be wasted, confidentiality might be compromised. As they say, too many cooks do spoil the broth, especially if they are not, competent or skilled enough or sensible enough. Then democratic leadership would not produce the desired results, right? Otherwise, democratic leadership is considered to be quite an effective style of leadership, especially with reference to motivation. Lastly, the third leadership style, that is laissez-faire. Laissez-faire style of leadership, also sometimes known as a free rein style of leadership. I think the name says it all, free rein, reins of a horse, with which you try to, control the horse. So free rein or laissez-faire style of leadership is the one in which the workers, the employees, they are granted, the highest possible degree of independence at the workplace, and there's minimum possible interference. Laissez-faire. Let the worker do whatever he wants to. That is laissez-faire or a free rein style of leadership, right? And also, it is worth mentioning that laissez-faire is just an extension of democratic leadership. It is just an extension of democratic leadership. And you can say democratic leadership at its peak is laissez-faire or free rein style of leadership. And that is why almost all the advantages and drawbacks of democratic leadership, they're similar to the advantages and drawbacks of laissez-faire or free rein. In democratic leadership, the main advantage was motivation. Same is the case with laissez-faire. When you allow somebody to, work independently and, there's, interference is non-existent, obviously he'll be motivated to work. And the main drawback in democratic leadership, we just learned that, if the workers are not competent enough, then it will cause disorder, time will be wasted and all. This is I think, even more valid in case of laissez-faire, that if you grant maximum possible independence to a worker, and he he is not reliable enough in terms of skills or otherwise in terms of integrity, obviously this will prove to be a disaster because there is no check. So democratic leadership appears to be the most balanced, but remember, laissez-faire is a useful style of leadership only in case of specialists. Businesses or the management, they adopt this style of leadership, free reign, laissez-faire, in case of specialists, because specialists obviously they have an expertise and they demand a certain degree of, independence, and they don't approve of the fact that the management, they're trying to interfere unnecessarily. So yes, for specialists this might work, but one has to be cautious before this is implemented, right? And as I just explained, the advantages and drawbacks of laissez-faire are quite similar to the advantages and drawbacks of democratic leadership, right? So this should be it. I mean, all these points, all this material, this should suffice when you're attempting a question on leadership. But something very, very important. There's another topic, emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence. So it's strongly recommended that if it's an essay type question on leadership, you take a few points from emotional intelligence also and combine those with leadership. People who have, who have studied this, who have an idea about emotional intelligence, there were different elements, there were different competencies. For instance, there was empathy, there was social skills, there was motivation. So all these are highly relevant to leadership also. So you can easily add a paragraph. It will, add a touch of, quality to your answers. Combine emotional intelligence with leadership, and this is, like I said, it's advisable, especially if it's an essay type question and you need additional material. And not only for leadership or emotional intelligence, I've been emphasizing that in business, if you want to do well, it is very important for us to remember that various points from different topics, different sections, they can easily be combined into one answer. As long as it is relevant, just don't restrict yourself, don't confine yourself to a particular topic or to a particular section when you're attempting a question. Your overall knowledge of the subject, that'll be tested. So easily combine points from different topics and sections into one answer, and feel free to express yourself, right? So this should be it, and hopefully you've understood how to attempt a question on leadership. All right, this is it. Allah Hafiz.